Hi, I'm Katie Sirowich,
And I'm Robert Hansen.
and today we'll be talking about A Quiet Place, a movie where if you make a sound, you have the potential to die. So, that's pretty good.
Okay, so first off, general impressions. It's one of your favorites.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies all time. I don't see very many horror movies, but I had to see this one because the concept just seems so interesting, and I definitely wasn't disappointed.
I went to go see it mostly because of John Krasinski. Like you, I don't see a lot of horrors, but I loved him on The Office, and seeing him do sort of a dramatic role was really cool to see. I am also positive about it, but it's not one of my personal favorites. But I still have to appreciate, compared to a lot of other horrors or thrillers out, especially right now, it has a lot more quality and a lot more artistic vision to it, I think, than a lot of other ones which just seem like factory produced remakes and stuff like that. So, yeah. But getting into the story, so we start off in this convenience store, I believe?
Yeah, the opening of the movie really sets it up well, I think. It starts off in a convenience store, and they're just looking for medicine because one of their sons is sick. And I just thought that it escalates there, and it really sets the tone for the movie because of how even just fiddling with pill bottles and trying to get the one could potentially set a monster after them.
It's definitely cool in this scene because you get a sense of how lived in the world is, with all the just little, the most obvious one is the sand on the ground where it's the different walkways for them. But other stuff like that, like you said, with her going around with the pills. And the rocket ship is one of many different, tense, sort of, I consider them set pieces in the movie. Because you have, that's why I consider this more of a thriller than specifically a horror. Because it's different in that every scene where the monster is a part of it, you have all the known quantities. If you make this little sound, someone's going to die, and you know exactly how that works, and you understand. Whereas most horror movies try and keep the fear sort of hidden, and you don't know all of the facts about it. But with this one, it's very simple, and that makes it more intense.
Yeah, it's extremely well prepared. You can tell the minute that you enter the world when you watch the movie how lived in this world is. For example, in the convenience store, they were just so clever and so detailed about it. They left all of the chips there because, you won't take chips because they're too loud. If you eat them, you just crunch everywhere and you're going to die because that monster's going to get you. But
Yeah, definitely. So, scene ends, basically, the smallest one, the boy, none of the characters have specific names in the movie.
They have names, but you connect more with the character rather than associating with them with their name.
It's not really about.
It's more about the
much.
cohesive family unit than it is about any one single character.
Definitely. But so the smallest one wants this rocket ship because he believes that they can get out of here with this little toy, and his parents don't like that because that makes a lot of sound. But the girl, who is deaf, helps him out, gives him the rocket ship, it was the batteries, right?
They took the batteries out, but they had left them on a table.
Yeah, so he got that?
Yeah, he took them, but we saw the family left, and you see her hand him the rocket ship and walk away, but then you see the young boy take the batteries.
And the parents don't know about this at all, so they're on their walk back to their sort of shelter in this farmhouse, and he turns it on and gets killed, and then we cut immediately. And I love how the title is right there because that is such a great setup for the rest of the movie. And like I said, it's something that makes you know the stakes for the rest of the film, which sets up the best set piece of this film, which is the fireworks scene later on.
Exactly. I think, but I thought the way that they, that scene right before the title sequence, the way that they set it up with the father is in the front of the line, the son is in the far back, and they have, you hear the noise and everything stops. I remember I was sitting in the theater when I watched it in theaters first, and I just remember I was afraid to like open my snacks because it would just make too much noise because the sound design was so good. So I'm sitting there, and then everything goes even quieter than before, and all you can hear is the sound of that rocket ship. And the way that they had him in a full sprint toward his kid, and the monster just swoops in and takes him, that was like, that left me so like shocked and ready for the rest of the movie.
See, in a way, I first watched it in the theater as well. I think the theater experience is actually kind of the worst way to see this movie, because I watched it at Brass Mill, which is in the city, so everyone was loud there. Like no one kept quiet. But I think that's why I didn't have as much of a great reaction the first time, and then when I rewatched it, I realized like it's really well done.
I had a pretty good experience in the theater actually, because mine was like quieter. There weren't as many people seeing it, and it's just like when you get like a good audience in that theater, the movie's already quiet enough, so every silence is all the more deafening. Well, every sound is just like so much more effective because of the way that your ears are just blasted with it.
Definitely. So after that, we cut to sort of normal. We get a sense of like what normal life is from the day to day there. When we cut back from the title, and it's them doing different things around this farmhouse. A lot of great imagery here. My favorite one is when he lights the campfire, and then you just see in the distance all the different little lights going off. That's really great.
I was very curious about that, because that means that area is like well lived in, and that they have like almost kind of neighbors.
It is a little weird, I feel, how these monsters kind of overtook this land. There's a few inconsistencies, I feel, where you get a sense of like, how did they exactly take over this entire, it's implied to be a large portion of the nation, like when he I think sends signals out,
like
no one
the entire
responds.
World.
That's
because he was sending radio signals out to different countries.
It's sort of unclear on if it infected other countries or went into other countries, or if the other countries
not even
just
the people
aren't helping.
Yeah,
you know. But either way, it's a little weird how these. I'll get into that later, but I love a lot of the day-to-day life that they have going on here. We find out the main thing is that the mother is pregnant.
Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Yeah, that gets set up later, but that's like, this movie is a lot of big setup and then payoff near the end of the movie. There's a lot of things that come back, and so I thought that there was some great moments in that whole part of the first act, where you see them playing Monopoly with the yarn pieces and all that stuff, and she drops the lamp, and that's great. So yeah,
I think they did the exposition so well in this movie, because the thing about a lot of movies will take the lazy way out, and they'll have dialogue and they explain the exposition, but there's no dialogue other than them signing.
Yeah.
So they have to really visualize that. And you can see that, you can read the subtitles, you can see them signing, but a lot of it is also in the visuals that they use.
I think that aspect goes into a lot of different parts of the movie, because of the fact that they can't have a lot of dialogue by premise alone, they have to rely on a lot of different aspects. Like, I think the directing in this movie is just better than other horror movies, and it's more, the aspects of the story are way more well communicated through the shots themselves than just laying it out through dialogue or any other trope that most other horror movies do, and just other blockbuster movies in general. So anyways,
I wanted to talk about one specific part of the story, specifically a character. The daughter, the deaf or semi-deaf daughter. I'm not entirely sure, because that's not as clear, but I went into that movie not knowing that they would have a character that was hearing impaired. And I found out the first time I walked into that theater. So I was, I didn't really think about what would happen there wasn't a character like that. But the way they use that deaf character, and they use a deaf actor as well, which I thought was very good because you don't see a lot of those on the big screen. It's very good for like diversity of people with disabilities being represented in movies, but also the way that they use her as a character and using that hearing aid as a piece of like an integral part of the story.
See, I somewhat disagree with you there. I like her character, and I like the whole arc of the guilt she feels for somewhat leading to her brother's death, and the story arc of like she doesn't think John Krasinski, her dad, really loves her, and then that gets paid off at the end. But I personally feel as though the plot point with the hearing aid and the electromagnetic signals was kind of a cop-out in terms of the story, where I felt like the writers sort of dug themselves into a hole where how do they defeat this monster that is so powerful, and they came up with this idea of the electromagnetic signals. And if you think about it, like through the actual story they're presenting, where the entire world has been run over with these monsters supposedly, how did they take over cities and stuff like that? How did they take over any number of places that have a ton of electromagnetic signals? And I think it sort of broke my immersion personally. Yeah. But anyway, that's my thought on that.
I thought it was like a very important piece of the story. I don't really think it was a cop-out at all, because if you're going to have your cast speak sign language, you need that way for them to speak sign language, so they have a deaf character.
Yeah.
And you see her father constantly trying to get her a way to hear, because imagine in a world where you can't make a sound, how dangerous it is not to hear, because you can't hear what sounds you may be making. And so having this deaf character and having that hearing aid where he's constantly trying to help her like be able to survive in this world is very important, because it's necessary. And I think that the way that it ended up being the main component to defeat the monster, I don't think it was a cop-out, because it's there's like, it's kind of weird that it was an accident, but I don't think in this movie they're more focused on keeping their family together than trying to defeat these monsters, because they know that they're a family with 2 children.
Yeah, I did appreciate that aspect of her character. I did appreciate the fact of having to deal with being deaf or otherwise hearing impaired in that universe. I did appreciate that, and the logic of sign language and how that was implemented. I'm specifically just talking about that aspect of the hearing aid hurting the monsters and weakening them. But I do feel as though her character was well done. And that's sort of a theme throughout the movie, where some moments I feel don't exactly add up if you think of it through like a literal logical sense of like, how does this work in universe? But on an emotional sense, it works a lot with the story, and that part of, you can turn that part of your brain off and just enjoy it as that emotional beat that it's supposed to be. But anywho, did you want to continue with the plot?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about the overall like themes of this movie, because you go into it thinking that it's a horror movie, but then everything ties together, and it's more of a movie about family, I think. And I think that's one of the more beautiful pieces, that it's not focused on any one single character and their quest to survive. It's focused on how do we keep this family as a cohesive unit? How do we keep them together in the midst of this horrible apocalypse?
And it does such a good job of establishing these characters without a line of dialogue for a large portion of the movie. I mean, that's so important to get done in a story like this that is about family. So some great moments, like the sign language conversations with her father, and then that one scene in the basement where him and his wife are slow dancing to music. I love that.
Yeah, the way, just the sound design of that was amazing too.
Yeah, a lot of the sound design.
The sound design is incredible in this movie, because it especially relies on sound.
I like this is near the end of the movie, but when she puts the hearing aid on, and like a lot of the time you can hear in the audio like what she hears and what she doesn't.
Gosh, whenever it was in her perspective, it would be like completely silent. Like it would switch from like a camera, not necessarily her perspective, but a shot of her face. If it's that shot, you're seeing this is her. There's no audio. It's just completely silent, like not even the sound of ambience.
So, should we talk about the waterfall scene? Because that's the next scene that I wanted to talk about.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So, John Krasinski and his son go over to this waterfall to, I believe it was to just hunt for.
Yeah, they needed fish.
Yeah, they needed food.
It was like a lake first, then the waterfall. Or a river.
Yeah. So the whole aspect of the waterfall and the lake muting, essentially, like going over any sounds of talking.
Yeah, that just doesn't work.
It doesn't. It didn't.
It's
for
like
me.
because it's frequency based too.
It is good for, and that's what I said before. It's good for an emotional beat of him finally
like
being
that final
able to talk
release
to his son, and then getting some clarity. A big theme of this movie also is communication, and like seriously,
lack thereof.
Like a literal lack of communication, but it's also meant as like a figurative thing of how families often don't end up communicating as well as they should.
I thought about it that way.
So when they're talking at the waterfall in the lake, they finally get a moment of clarity, and he can talk about his daughter and the boy's sister, and that aspect is good. But also, again, from a logical sense, why don't they live here? Why don't they live in this place that would get rid of any danger in this situation, where you can literally scream at the top of your lungs and be safe, and you have food now because you're right next to where the fish are?
But eventually you're going to exhaust your resource if you continuously eat fish. You don't want to continuously eat fish because that's just a bad diet. And they have that entire farm there where he's also doing lots of research. So that was obviously a house that had already been built. They can't really construct a new house in this situation because it's just too loud.
That is true, but then I would present to you that underground bunker at the end of the movie where he built for her. I believe it was for her pregnancy, where he just puts this mattress over the entrance, and that blocks out any sound of them talking.
It wasn't any. It was just, it really muffles it enough to the point where.
Why don't they live there? Because that's where they already live, essentially.
It's like a.
It was big enough for her and her baby and a monster. So I mean.
Basically, the whole family. No. It's not like viable because you're going to have to come out to get food and stuff. And if you grow up in that place, if you live there and you become too used to not having to control your volume when you have to do things that occur outside the house, like hunt or harvest crops, then I think that's very dangerous because you might not be as conservative with your volume when you're not used to it anymore because you've just felt the illusion of safety.
That may be what they intended in the script, but I didn't feel that as much. And what I would have done, what I would have liked is if during the waterfall scene, maybe he implied that in a way while they were talking.
Well, I think it's better that they kept it simple because if they went and they were like, she's only going to live in the bunker because that it would just be, I like the ability that we have to make inferences and have that discussion about it because it's not completely linear, you know?
Yeah, in a way that's true. I see what you're saying. It's just some beats of the movie just didn't work for me on that level. But anyways.
Can we talk about the fireworks scene?
Well, we're getting to that. First
I don't think we need to go step by step.
They have to get back from the lake first, though. And that is when they find this old man who is just standing there, and then they look down, and his wife is dead, supposedly killed from the monster. And they tell him, or they don't tell him, but obviously he gives the same note.
It's obvious that he's going to
scream at the top of his lungs.
Yeah, because if you can't really, it's hard to hold it in. That's the thing. Like sometimes I get so angry, I just want to let it out, you know?
I disagree in a way. I just don't understand how that situation was in such a way where he couldn't wait for this innocent man.
Yeah, I don't
and his
know why
boy
he's
to just walk through before he screamed.
like I
even
understand
at
why he
that-
screamed, but not at that point.
If you can hold it, because he was already holding it in. He was holding a scream in when they walked up.
And then he shows up with his like
and then he
9-year-old
just screams
son.
immediately once they're right next to him.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, a little boy, let's get him killed.
That was the scene that felt clunky for me in the movie.
Yeah, I don't think that was effective
don't-
as it was intended. It was effective, but not as effective as it was intended to be.
I don't know if there's any specific part that I can point to as logically unsound, but it just felt like there's so many ways to get around that, and it doesn't exactly line up the way they intended.
I thought it is necessary at that point in the movie though, because it's like they've been at that point. They had been doing like a lot. They had just like yelled and screamed, and they'd had like a good time, and he was feeling better. So you need that to be like the danger's still here. It's still very real.
Definitely. So now we
The
can talk about
fireworks
the
scene.
fireworks scene.
That's the best scene in the movie.
Yeah, definitely.
So, oh my gosh.
We have already established that the wife is pregnant. I don't know if we know how.
I think she was like no, not how. She was very. Yes, we know how.
Oh, no. How long she's been pregnant is what I was going to say. Not just go. Just continue.
So I thought it was so amazing. Just the way that you can tell how much the family has prepared for it, because obviously they've had 9 months to prepare. So and they're just every detail that goes into it is just amazing. Like the red lights. Those lighting,
I like
nobody
lights.
like it. It's like yellow lighting. It's like so you can see your crops at night, because you want to do that,
Yeah, definitely. You don't want monsters eating that.
and then just she like goes down and she flips that switch and they turn red, and even just the shot of that was beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if a lot of horror movies use like spooky red lighting,
Yeah.
But
and even the
this
trailer
one
makes
was
it
like,
seem like
yeah.
that is for the monster, like the monster is coming.
Yeah. But it's like,
in the
no,
movie,
she's
it's
pregnant.
completely different.
Yeah.
And that's another scene, like I talked about at the beginning, where it's great because you have all the known quantities, and if she makes a sound while she's pregnant, the monsters are going to come. And
she's going into labor, she has to be completely
labor,
quiet.
yeah.
That's just the stakes. The stakes. They're
Yeah.
they're insanely high.
And that's what makes great tension.
And
What the
fact that
is
even though she was going through all this, she remained like clever and so brave too.
Yeah.
Like when she used the timer, like the monster followed because of the stupid nail. The monster followed her down, and she used the timer, and it's just so clever. I think
Yeah, a lot of payoff happens in that one scene.
And it's like you're rooting for every single character in this.
Yeah, definitely. And I love how the solution too of the fireworks themselves.
Oh,
it's
the
a
fireworks!
good idea.
So good.
Like, yeah,
They were so good.
It's smart. It's smart for the characters and it's smart for the writing.
And it's viable too. It's not like something that's completely out of reach, because they obviously have access to stores. And who would be trying to get fireworks where you need to be completely quiet?
And you could also argue that also relates back. That's why they had to have the waterfall scene to establish that larger sound.
Yeah, they had to establish the larger sound.
But yeah, so John Krasinski's character finds his wife in the bathroom. She slams on the wall, which also I found to be
dumb,
a
but
little bit.
it's just I really did enjoy it.
That's sort of like that jump scare trope of other lesser horror movies sort of creeping in. But he finds her and they reconnect, and
it's beautiful.
He sees his baby,
Oh
and
my God.
they go down to that underground bunker area that I was talking about before. And the kids, they end up at the
at this
silo.
point are at the silo.
Yes. So they fall through into the inside of the silo.
Oh my God, drowning in like corn.
Yeah, that's weird. That's
That
a little
happens.
weird. Okay.
You suffocate. It's
a
like
little-
it's
Okay.
yeah. It'll
I
suffocate
found
you.
A few like I said, like the old man scene, that was a little clunky to me when the monster drops down on the door and can't like move around the door to get to them. When they hold the door up above them and they can somehow support his weight, but then also
I don't think they're really supporting his weight, because he's more like clawing at it. He's not like like hopscotching on it. Like,
He's not just hopping on it,
yeah,
pushing them down.
it's not a
That would
trampoline.
be great.
But
Not my favorite.
Yeah.
Not my favorite in the movie.
it was very like this entire movie I was anxious.
Yeah.
I wanted to eat my
from
Sour
that-
Patch
from-
Kids and I couldn't because like the rapper was too loud.
From the fireworks scene, once it turns to nighttime, from that fireworks scene
God.
on, it becomes a lot of tension in the movie. Different aspects
Like
of it, but
my entire body was like tense. I was like, oh my God.
definitely. Probably the best design from a strict horror perspective, not necessarily from a thriller perspective, was when it starts leaking into the underground bunker and you just see the monster come out from under
That
the
was-
water. And it's just this really quiet scene of her like slowly
quiet
wading
scene.
through the water as the monster is like coming
It's
right
like-
up to her. Yeah.
Oh my God, that was like it like slithers in, and I was like, oh no, they're not gonna do one of these.
they play with the concept a lot. A lot of different aspects of like, oh, like you think the idea of like, oh, if you're quiet or if you're not quiet, you die. Like how much coverage do you get out of that? But they make a lot of smart decisions with it and have a lot of different versions of that idea throughout the movie. And like I said, it just helps to build up this lived-in universe of like, how would you actually survive? What are the rules? How does it work? And that was really good from a story perspective. And then I believe we get to the John Krasinski seeing his kids as they
And
go
then he
into the car.
dies.
Yes, this is his death scene.
Everybody, welcome to the death scene.
Yeah, tragic. But
Oh, I cried. I've cried at 2 horror movies, The Sixth Sense and A Quiet Place. Those are like the only 2 horror movies I've ever seen, though. So.
But yeah, he. You could tell John Krasinski really loved this project because he puts so much emotion on screen, especially.
And it's so hard because he didn't vocally say it because he's still using sign language, but he's able to convey it in his. I have always loved you, like, and it's just because his kids are about to get like eaten by that thing.
Yeah, definitely.
And but they don't even care about the monster anymore. All they're focusing on now is their father, and it's like that realization that like he is going to do this, and then he just screams. And like a lot of people might think like the scream was pretty funny, like it kind of was, but it was just such raw emotion, I thought.
Yeah, you could take that in 2 ways. I feel like
Yeah.
if you were in that mindset of not taking the movie
Yeah.
seriously, it would feel a little goofy. But I
But
mean, that's a
it's-
lot of
he's just-
different.
It's like his final. It's literally his last words. Like,
It depends on how you.
yeah, it
approach
does. But like
Good child actors too. You didn't
They
say
were-
that before, but
they were very good.
yeah, when
Everybody
they're
in this
driving
movie was
off and she's
incredible.
just looking out the back and she's like looking at them eating her dad. That sucks.
Good
but
dinner.
yeah. So then we're nearing the end of the movie and it's morning. As
The way they bring it back to day to find like that we've got our solution, I thought.
yeah.
was very,
So did they just drive like
I don't.
30 seconds up to the house? Because it makes it
It was like a downhill, and they just kind of rolled.
okay. So did
I was really confused about like how they ended up there.
the
But
timing's a little weird where it just becomes dawn, and I didn't know if it was dawn by the time John Krasinski died, and we just didn't see the sun. You know what I mean? Because how long did they roll
well,
down?
that was a
Because
long
that's lot of
night because
sound.
she goes into labor. There's that fireworks
Yeah.
show. They drown in a silo.
Yeah, I didn't know if the implication was the entire night passed, or they literally rolled down this hill for like
For
a
like
long
4
time,
hours.
and then like ended up like that would make a lot of sound, but I guess the implication is that they just roll down a little bit and
And then
now
walk
it's-
the rest of
now
the
it's
way.
daytime. But the rest of the family is able to reconnect, and they see
Dad's
their
gone.
mother and they hug, and
Yeah.
it's really sweet until it's
She
not.
saw it happen on the television. She saw him die.
Yeah, until it's not, because they go back down, and the monster is back.
Yeah, back for more.
So,
I thought the way they ended this movie was great.
like, it's kind of like The Screaming, where if you could look at it a certain way, and then another way it's a little bit cheesy, because she literally just reloads her shotgun.
I love that because it's a hopeful note. It's like, I didn't think of it like as like funny or like, haha, here we go, like, but like I looked at it and I was like, this is she's about to kick some butt, like.
That's true.
Yeah.
But again, from a logic standpoint, I feel like by the end of the movie, they made the monsters a little too weak.
I think that they were always.
I don't understand how they took over the world if all they need to defeat them is an electromagnetic signal and a shotgun.
It's frequency based though. It's different frequencies. Not many people are going to find that out.
Someone in the world would have figured that out though.
They could have, but also, how long is it going to take of them not being quiet and hardly being able to discuss this with peers before they discover this? Like, and maybe some other parts of the world had discovered it already, because as you said, it might have been a global thing. So we don't know. Like, maybe this was already a solution somewhere, and it just kind of happened upon them because they happen to have the hearing aid.
They had enough time to write an article about them, as you see in the beginning of the movie, where there's like newspapers flying.
It's sound.
Yeah. But anyways,
newspapers get published
as
in a matter of days, though.
And as the movie ends, we get a good look at the monster. I think for around the first time in the movie, where and you know, the effects are used sparingly, but except for that final few scenes,
they looked very good.
But I think they looked good, especially for this movie had a smaller budget than most. I think it was like 20 million, which sounds like a lot, but most movies are like 100, 200 million. But I thought the effects were good. I think they could have made it use some practical effects.
I think the only thing they didn't. Yeah, you're right about like the practicality, because like it makes it all the more real for the actors. But even without anything there, the actors did an incredible job of like acting as if they were in that danger.
So we get that tense scene where they're in the same room and they're fighting, and her hearing aid opens up a part of its head. It basically
because it had opened up before to like help it hear stuff when it was like quieter.
Yeah.
But now it's literally like distorting its eardrums.
So and shoots it and it dies, and
dead.
then the final
and everybody in the theater is like collectively like yes.
And the final few shots of the movie are seeing on the TV is just an army of them come into.
It said on that whiteboard that he had of like weaknesses. It said there were 3 on the in the vicinity. So it was the other 2 like showing up.
It was just the other 2.
Yeah, it was just 2, but you saw them going across multiple cameras.
Okay. That's why That's okay.
I can't imagine like both of them coming at me at the same time though. Like one's fine, but oh my god. like.
That's true, and it's left ambiguous as to whether they live or die from that.
But it's you know they have the tools to live, and you're rooting for them even after you leave the theater.
Yeah. So that was the story. It's really well written. There are a few logical fallacies that we talked about, but from an emotional standpoint, it gets its themes across really well, and that's what it set out to do, and it accomplished that. So other aspects of the movie. Cinematography, we already touched on this a bit.
Cinematography.
Yeah, but it's really gorgeous in a lot of places.
It's beautiful.
And something they did with like the color grading, I think, especially in the farm scenes, it just seems so like rustic, and like you get a sense that
we've gone back to like old fashioned in order to survive.
Yeah. And I think that also kind of helps to strengthen the sort of family theme, because it feels like a very like home, like it feels like a very homey place, the farm. And like we said, there's a lot of, it's paced and cut really well, edited together really well, especially in the set pieces. Other than that, I have positive thoughts on it.
I wanted to like focus, I mentioned it briefly, but on the red lights, because not just their use within the story, but how effective they were as a piece of lighting in these shots, because they give a red tint, and it's like viable. It's not like we're putting red on because it's spooky and bloody. It's like this is, and it just made it all the more beautiful.
considering like that most of the third act takes place at night,
Yeah.
you needed something like that. And like a lot of movies nowadays, like they'll have a scene at night and you won't be able to know. What's going
You don't
on.
have
You
no idea. It's
what's
all like
happening
shaky
in front
cam
of you.
and just completely
Yeah, this was way more. It took its time. It held shots for a long time. I thought, which was really good. It isn't just cutting between a million different shots and you don't even really know what's going on from each one. And so yeah, it's really well made. So finally, sound design. It's just really well done. It's really important in a film like this, obviously, since that's sort of a
It's
gimmick.
the main. It's literally the entire
The
plot
hook.
line. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we already touched on, a lot of great beats, like with the hearing aid, and just they play with it a lot when, like I said, they put the earbud in and you can hear the music, and yeah, it's very good.
I just thought I really like the sound of the monsters, like just the clicking they employed. They kind of used an echolocation type thing, and it's just like you hear like the clicking, and it's like in the theater, obviously, like it's better, like because you have those great speakers, and it's like so you like they did their silences so well, and it's hard to go from such like abrupt silence to such dramatic changes in sound, but they did it extremely well. So they did it like extremely well, and I thought that they needed it in a movie like this, and I thought even the music really aided because there wasn't much music, but there was that dramatic and like tension-inducing music as well.
It's subtle, and that's kind of intentional because they want a lot of silence.
Yeah, because if you fill up your silence with just music, then you're not going to be as anxious as this movie made you.
So overall, really well done. Excellent acting, well directed. It's just a really well-made movie. I have a few problems with the story here and there, but overall, really positive about it, and it's one of her favorites. So go see it.
I'd give this movie
I
12
give this movie
hearing aids out of 9 eardrums.
Okay. I'd give this movie 4 Quiet Places out of 5. 4 John Krasinski's out of 5.
5 Jim Halperts out of 6.
Yeah. Are we done?